Here.
John Lowenstein. John Moa.
Here.
Here she.
Here.
There she are. Rishi Narayan,
Here.
welcome.
Thanks.
Keith Orr. Sandy Smith.
Here.
John Split.
Here.
You have a quorum.
As soon as the meeting was properly noticed and posted and all of that.
Yeah.
Very good. Audience participation. If nobody signed up. 4 people max, 4 minutes. Very good. Reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter, Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Council.
You probably don't recall that at your July DDA meeting, I reported the Planning Commission Executive Committee was in the process of hiring a consultant to organize a very public process of re-examining the downtown A2D2 zoning changes that were adopted in 2009. Downtown Design Guidelines Review Task Force was also to be appointed to look into the possibility of changes in Ann Arbor's design guidelines and review process. We are disappointed that the Design Guidelines Review Task Force is not yet met. We don't know when those are scheduled and if they are to meet. In late July and through August, where a lot of us were in other places, the consulting firm of Aaron and Purdue, calling themselves ENP Associates, conducted a series of interviews, focus groups, public events, community coffees, a public workshop, and online surveys to engage residents, businesses, employees, and downtown property owners. That's all of us in a discussion of what works and what doesn't work and what changes need to be made in downtown zoning. Recently, the consulting group released a summary of some of those findings. And last night, the members of the CAC reviewed those summaries. Not surprisingly, 7 private interviews of developers and downtown real estate professionals, as well as 2 DDA representatives, unknown to me, indicated that they felt current zoning was meeting its intent of more development and density downtown, that there were still too many limitations on downtown development. Most of them, among those 7, felt that design guidelines should be more strictly enforced. On the other hand, at larger public focus group meetings and at public workshops, citizen participants largely agreed the north side of Huron Street, between Division Street, the south side of William, between Main and 4th, and the Ann Street site adjacent to City Hall should be rezoned downward. Perhaps to D2 or even to a new hybrid, D1 zoning. You got a D11, we got a D12, you could easily have a D13, which is maybe 8 stories, is one of the recommendations. Near downtown, historic and residential neighborhoods they felt needed to be protected by buffer zoning. There was also general agreement that the current granting of residential premiums was not creating a desired diverse housing mix, allowing too much student housing and not encouraging affordable housing. Most also support the idea that design guidelines should be followed to be eligible for any premiums that we grant. That they should follow the design guidelines in order to get those premiums. Give design guidelines more teeth than they have. Across the board, most people in all phases of the public process, including online surveys, agree that more diverse housing should be encouraged in the downtown, and the design of new buildings, especially with respect to adjacent historic neighborhoods, should be improved. In this regard, we members of the Citizens Advisory Council were very encouraged by the Planning Commission's inclusion of, and I quote here, mandatory adherence to the city's design guidelines as a condition of any request for proposals for the future sale and development of the former YMCA site on 5th and Wing. We hope that that's a pattern that will move into the greater zone. ENP Association is now scheduled a series of community coffees, bag lunches, and public focus groups for the next 2 weeks. You can go to the Planning Commission site on the city's home page for a list. Our downtown area CAC focus group will be next Tuesday, September 10th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. in the City Hall basement conference room, and I'm talking to everybody here who may be listening to this, and everybody's welcome to come to that. That meeting will be open. We'll be glad to have them if they want to show up and talk about the future downtown zoning unit. If you want a copy of that list of events, I've got about 6 or 7 copies with me.
Thank you, Ray. Communications from the DDA chair. I would like to take just a moment and welcome our newest Board Member Rishi and invite him to give us a 30-second synopsis of who he is and what he does downtown.
Sum me up in less than 30 seconds. So. My name is Rishi Narayan. I came to Ann Arbor from Okemos, Lansing area. I came here for school, for college, and stayed throughout with a brief stint in Berkeley, California after I got married, where I flew back and forth because my wife was finishing her PhD out at Cal Berkeley. And in town, I'm involved in various things, but my main business is underground printing. I co-founded that with my partner, who was my best friend growing up. We both lived in Ann Arbor now. We're no longer Lansingites, so we've been disowned from there. So that's me in a nutshell, and looking forward to joining the board.
Okay, welcome. Communications from the DDA. Anybody? Seeing none, we'll move on. We have our quorum, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the July 3rd, 2013 meeting?
So moved.
Support? Any changes, corrections, notations? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Very good. And for the 2013 annual meeting?
So moved.
Support? Any other corrections to it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those are accepted. Subcommittee reports. Joan, I'm going to ask you if you would tell us about partnerships and economic development.
Certainly. At our last meeting, we had the 618 South Main project team here, and they proposed some streetscape improvements from the project site all the way up north to Ashley Muse, including paving, lighting, and planting enhancements. So we gave some input on that design and asked questions about the project timing. The streetscape is going through reviews with city staff, and as part of our brownfield grant, we will review any changes and work to approve the improvements at a future meeting. So these streetscapes, the streetscape improvements all around this project are part of a brownfield grant from the DDA. That's input and money from the DDA that allowed this project to be built. That was that, 618 South Main. Then we looked at the new 2012-2013 State of the Downtown report, which I think everybody here has received. And I know we've received it electronically too, so we don't have to kill too many trees in producing a lot of them. The report was published in August, and it really highlights the DDA role as the place to go for information about the downtown. It notes that the downtown is home to 73% of all the city's special events, 26% of Ann Arbor jobs, 107 sidewalk cafes, and there have been 26 new businesses in the past year. So supporting this activity, we continue to see population growth, which is now up 56% since 2000. So the report is on the DDA website at a2dda.org, where anybody can look at it. Then we got a report about the Ann Arbor Economic Collaborative Task Force. It's a City Spark DDA task force. It had met once prior to the July meeting and primarily looked at the Spark 5-year strategic plan, including areas of overlap with the city and DDA, including helping to sell and redevelop the city properties per the Connecting William Street plan. And that's what we did then. So our next Partnerships Economic Development Committee meeting is next Wednesday, September 11th at 9 a.m.
Very good. And kudos to Amber for all of her work on the downtown report. She did a great job.
And Tom, our intern,
and Tom.
also. But they really did do a great job. And it's a great reference document with lots of facts and figures, but also gives such a great overview to look at what's going on in the downtown.
Operations Committee. is not here. Does somebody want to go through the year-end financials unaudited and the parking report?
I was volunteered to do that, although I'm not terribly well prepared. The unaudited financials from last year, last fiscal year, are on page 16. And I'm going to ask Joe to answer any specific questions. The TIF budget, we were over slightly, but fairly close. The parking budget, we were over significantly, and that, Joe, that has to do with, I assume, timing of things that we ended up paying last fiscal year that we expect to pay in the previous fiscal year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So having to do with our major construction projects, the underground structure, etc.
And some grants.
Okay, and some grants that we moved. That's right. Okay.
Will be paid this year.
The housing fund, were over budget again because of, I believe a grant that we ended up paying that fiscal year that we weren't expecting. And parking maintenance, what is?
We held it. The repair work that we're doing now currently, it started after July 1st in the new year.
So all these things are, again, just a matter of timing.
Correct.
You can push from one fiscal year to the next.
Correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Joe? Other than the ones I've already asked. Okay. Thank you. I'm not going to go into the individual funds in detail as Mr. Hewitt usually does. If anybody has any questions about those, direct them towards Joe. But those statements are on the next several pages. The parking numbers begin on, right, I have a page there, page 23. And those were, the page 23 numbers are for the quarter that ended at the end of the fiscal year. And as you can see, revenues were up. Expenses were also up. And again, we're looking at the category, Joe, just to reiterate, you don't need to get back up, but the grants, capital cost, and bond installment sale payments were all things that were pushed from the previous fiscal year, and that's why you see a number that's over the expected expenses. Okay, I'm sorry. Moving to page 26, which are the current parking numbers for June. Revenues were up 7.41%. Hourly patrons were down 7.67%. So again, we're staying fairly well on track in terms of our revenues. The hourly patrons obviously can mean that fewer people are staying longer. That's a statistic that you can take for what it is. Fourth quarter fiscal year, fourth quarter numbers are on the next page. And again, revenues up, revenues up 11.76%, hourly patrons slightly down. And then on the following page, we have fiscal year numbers, and again, revenues up almost 12%, hourly patrons down approximately 2%. Does anybody have any questions about those numbers, John?
I have a quick question. Obviously, there was a big drop for Washington and 4th, presumably mainly due to the 4th Avenue.
Street closing,
Street
yeah.
closing,
Yes,
getting
I
rebuilt.
do think so.
Yeah, it'd be great if in the future, as we as we know about street closings that are going to last for a pretty long period of time, we can anticipate and build it in and, as best we can. It'd be nice to just be more, coordinated as best we can with foreseeing what street closures mean in downtown, not just for the parking system, but for other things.
Yeah, and again, the daily commuters find their way there. It's the folks who are parking on a temporary basis coming into town who are the ones who have trouble dealing with that. And if we can figure out a way to communicate that better, we should.
Yeah. Thank you.
Art fair numbers are on the next page, page 29. And we didn't quite match the numbers from the previous year, which I believe were our best ever, but we did quite well given the weather. We saw a lot of demand in the parking system during art fair. Any other questions about parking? I see we have a resolution. It is on page 30. It is to provide a grant to Washtenaw County for improvements to the annex building. I would like to move the resolution.
Support.
And I'm going to ask Susan up to explain this.
So as we've often discussed, one of the roles of the DDA is to work to support all of the various uses downtown, not just businesses, not just residences, but government, community services, and so forth. The county is an ally of our community in that they have been very committed to our downtown. Many of their operations have been brought to the downtown. One of the most important services that they offer is in the annex building, which is the former YMCA, and they're providing a lot of their outreach services to individuals in our community with mental health concerns. The challenge that they've been struggling with for a period of time has been that the building was never configured for use as an office building, and a lot of their clients are unfortunately forced to stand out on the steps waiting to just meet with their services person. And so they've been working at developing a plan over the last many months to retrofit the interior of that building to allow for a lobby so people can comfortably sit and also maneuver more comfortably through the building. So I've been working with them, talking with them, trying to find ways the DDA can be supportive of their efforts. And the plans for this renovation are now at the place where they feel really good moving forward. The portion of the project we're being asked to support is $300,000 of $1 million cost. Again, the project very much nails our 10-year plan, and in terms of dollars setting aside for capital improvements and grants, but it's also in keeping with our mission and our development plan. So we talked about a little bit in committee, and with that then it was agreed to bring it forward.
Susan, do you think it's fair to say that without that, our portion of it, that they probably won't go forward with it, that they just won't have the money in their budget?
I don't know that. I do know, like all agencies, they're working within a very tight budget. I don't want to speak for them in terms of budget, but I know that this is a significant part of why it's being possible to move forward with it. It absolutely helps to make that project possible.
I think this is important because that piece of Fourth Ave is one of the major links between Main Street and Carytown. It has a lot of pedestrian traffic across it. I think there's been more. My office is obviously right on Fourth Ave, so I can look out my door and watch the number of people that go by and all that. And between that and what's been done with Fifth Avenue has become a better pedestrian connection. But Fourth Ave seems to be the one that's used more than any. And the more that blocks a little bit of a no man's land because of all the county buildings and all that. So I think that it's important that we try to support the county in this and maintain that good link between parts of town.
I agree with that, and I see some other linkages here with some long-term DDA goals. DDA has worked for a very long time to help people with affordable housing, and many of those folks who may be living in affordable housing near downtown area may also be receiving services at this facility. And if we can help that, I think that's a good thing for us to do. I think this is a vital service. I know the county does have some fairly significant budget issues that they are working through. I can well imagine that this is critical. But I also, as I recall, though I don't have it in front of me, the statute even calls out DDA's ability, and in fact, you may see it as a duty almost, to help in the financing of buildings, government buildings in the downtown area. It continues the investment in that area and keeps people working and receiving services. And so I think this meets some of the criteria that are spelled out, what we've been working on, and also in the statute.
All in favor of this resolution, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes.
I don't know what the plan was in terms of who was going to introduce the streetscape framework plan. Is that you? Okay, good. Because I knew it wasn't me.
Well, actually, technically, it should be Keith Orr, because as I think most of you know, Keith is taking over for me for the transportation component of what we do. But of course, Keith isn't here, so I will fill in. The streetscape framework plan, I think everyone's been introduced. We've had quite a few presentations of it now, and it's a collaborative effort with city staff. And part of the work that's happening right now is to document existing conditions, policies, and so forth, with the idea of leading up to putting an RFQ out for firms to help assist in putting it together. They're professional firms who have good experience in places like Portland and San Francisco, et cetera, that do this sort of thing. And so I think up till this point, it's been very encouraging and successful collaboration. Amber's done a great job working with city staff to sort of help move this effort forward. And the goal is to release the RFQ next week, hopefully. And then the process would simply be that once those qualifications come in, go through an evaluation process, and then narrow it down to firms from which actual proposals would be solicited. And hopefully getting folks started as soon as we can work through this process. Straightforward.
Any questions? Summer sidewalk repairs update. Thank you, John.
I think I can handle that. We have been this summer going through making mostly minor repairs to the sidewalks, taking care of trip hazards, etc. We have also been and have now completed all of the ADA compliant ramps downtown. We've just finished the final four and most difficult of those, so they are all complete. We've been trimming trees, we will be planting trees, and just basically taking care of the little things that people see. And we are about to complete that work for the summer, and we will obviously turn around and begin doing the same thing again next summer, perhaps a little bit more extensively, but that work has been complete other than some tree plantings.
Forest Avenue Structure Pilot Parking Permit Project.
So I can give that report if that's okay. In the discussions last spring surrounding contribution in lieu parking permits and so forth, there was a robust dialogue about how to provide monthly permits in a fair way when the demand is so much larger than supply. So this summer we began a pilot project where we're exploring, because in the Southview area we only have one garage, the Forest Garage. We've been exploring the possibility of trying a different method as opposed to individuals contacting us and then off a wait list, permits are provided. Instead, to see if we could engage the property owners and assign permits to a building based on the square footage of the building and have them in turn distribute to their tenants. We sent out letters to all the property owners in the Southview area. One of the things that was most interesting about it, we thought we'd be flooded with property owners very interested to be able to have some permits to offer, almost none of them were interested. It is a hassle, frankly, to manage parking permits, and one of the beauties of the system we're finding out through the pilot is actually it's easier for many of the property owners to have the DDA managing the demands, the wait list, and so forth. So we're still exploring. I think there's still more information to be gleaned. We're going to be talking to some of the property owners, I think, is the next step. Again, in our hope to understanding what is a fair way to do this. But that experiment so far has been actually pretty interesting. It has accomplished at least a part of what we wanted, which was help us to understand how it's working in the marketplace. So we'll report more as we know more, as the project moves forward.
Good, thank you. Draft 5-year project plan.
As long as I'm here.
Yep.
So one of the things that was discussed this spring was that after many years of being focused on very large construction projects, the DDA was ending a cycle. I think, to quote one of our illustrious board members, the pig in the python. You anticipated the pig going in, the pig was midway through the python, well, the pig has finally left the python. This summer we purchased the first in Washington garage. So with it, that was the last of that sequence of big projects. And in the time to come, to re-engage ourselves in all those projects that have been accumulating. Last fall at our retreat, many projects came forward. Meeting with community members, ideas come forward. Meeting with Spark, with City Council, with others, projects keep coming forward. So what we did at the Operations Committee was assemble all of these projects so that we had in one place all of them, not with the goal of saying one versus another, but instead to say we're working on several projects all at the same time. Even as we're planning the big projects, we should be thinking about things we could be doing. Perhaps the most important thing that was done in committee was an affirmation of the DDA's vision for downtown. Others might ascribe to us various visions, but what I thought the committee did a really good job on was to set forward for ourselves as a DDA, why are we doing these projects? What is it we're trying to do? For the home audience, if they'll indulge me, I'll read what the committee came up with. Our vision for downtown is a walkable, vibrant, authentic, attractive, historic, inclusive, growing, diverse, multi-season downtown, full of lots of things to do, teeming with downtown residents and healthy, locally owned, unique businesses. The community's job and commerce center, a place of shared prosperity, and nationally known as a center for innovation and entrepreneurialism. That's the vision we're striving toward. That's why we're here. And we affirmed, again, our mission as set forward by the City Council in '82, which is to undertake public improvements that have the greatest impact in strengthening the downtown and attracting private investment. Because from the beginning, it was seen that we can't do it alone. We have to do it in partnership. We do it in partnership with public entities like the city, but as importantly, we do it in partnership with the private sector. They have a huge role to play downtown. And in our development plan, what we also talked about in committee were the strategies on how to get there. Again, before you think projects, what are the overarching strategies? And they are identity, including showcasing what's unique about Ann Arbor downtown. It's a special place. It's unlike any other downtown. Infrastructure, which includes not only construction, but as John Split just described, the maintenance of the infrastructure. Transportation of all types, not buses and cars alone, but also everything from zip cars to air ride to the airport, all kinds of transportations. This is encouragement, housing with a full spectrum of housing for people of all ages and all incomes. Development partnerships, including our Brownfield Grant Program, our energy grants, our work in sidewalks, and so forth. And support for community services, such as we just supported with the county, but that includes supporting the city and all of the work that the city does, WCC, the library, the federal government, the public schools are downtown. We have a lot of government partners, but also our nonprofits are playing a role in downtown, and we're there to support them. And not least, our focus on sustainability, and not just environmental sustainability, but also economic sustainability and social sustainability. Those very large concepts then set the tone for what we constructed as a draft, as a working document, our list of projects. So as you open it up, what you'll see is we've grouped them under very large headings. Again, strategies, mission, and vision. The large areas include streetscape projects, trying to encapsulate all of them in one place. We're looking at things like sidewalk maintenance as an ongoing element, infrastructure, transportation, business encouragement, housing, downtown parks, and community services. And what the committee described for itself was that these are not projects in competition, but rather projects that are all of them important. And our job as a committee at operations will be to figure out how we can be working at many levels all at the same time. We know, for instance, that at Southview, the amount of new residential is increasing the amount of need for more sidewalk width, and those tree planters are now becoming an obstacle. So we have to begin thinking about it, even as we're also looking at the brick streets in the Carytown area, saying the walkability of the farmers market area, the identity of the farmers market area needs to be enhanced with those brick streets. We've got to figure out a way to be working simultaneously on a few projects. We also try to encapsulate under maintenance the small things, such as John just described, like tree pruning, which is not being done by anybody, as well as things like our trees are dying on Liberty Street currently because the planters they're in are only 3 feet by 3 feet. So let's get in there and actually expand those tree planters. Infrastructure, everything as sexy as sanitary mains to things like alley repairs and elevators at a very, very important parking garage where the elevators are operating at about 1 mile an hour. We get into transportation, looking at things like finding ways to do express bus service from Ypsilanti to Ann Arbor, finding ways to build another bike house, looking at doing the link again, something we often talk about. Well, let's get serious and figure out with ATA the ways in which we can do this. A big element that came through committee was the sidewalks are important, but they lead to the crosswalks. And many of our streets are waiting their turn to get repaired. In the interim, we could go in every summer and do a strip repair in the crosswalks to make them walkable until the roads themselves are ready to be repaired. We tried to encapsulate from the city CIP the road resurfacings that are coming. For instance, we know State Street's on the horizon. Let's bring back the State Street Association's request to widen the sidewalks and time whatever work happens with road repair with the sidewalk work, and it works perfectly. The framework plan will have been concluded, and we'll understand where we need to be in terms of sidewalk width by the time the project's coming. We have a chance on several other street resurfacings to do something the same. What other improvements could we be doing? So it's a working, breathing document. I hope that at committee, people will feel comfortable adding new projects. In fact, when Rishi and I just met a few days ago, another project for our list came up. And the timing of this through committee will make themselves more clear. There's a lot of work to be done, and none of it needs to wait. All of it needs to be started, and all of it needs to be talked through. So this is our best shot at trying to put it into one place. And I welcome questions, and certainly those that were at committee can answer questions as well.
I think this is a terrific start. It really does pull together, I think, a lot of the things we've talked about. And I particularly like the way it sort of organizes it into certain project types, whether it's transportation or this or that, because it'll give us the opportunity to see what the cross relationships are between a lot of these things. You know, there's a relationship between a sidewalk improvement and transportation, bus stops, those sorts of things. So I think this is a good tool that allows us to start thinking in terms of prioritizing projects and how we want to outreach to get more information and so forth. So thank you for the good work.
Is this realistic in 5 years?
So what you didn't hear me say was that we were going to accomplish them all. And I think it's really important to make that point. For instance, we're working on a framework plan. The framework plan will be the bedrock on which the streetscape projects will rest. But it's important to begin planning them. It's important to remember that 5th and Division took 7 years from when it was first described in a retreat to actual implementation. The State Street improvements took 6 years. So if we're taking our time in developing really good projects, you don't wait to do them. You actually begin thinking about it now. And we are likely to be in 5 years. If not some of them being done, we will be underway with planning for or anticipating the next 5 years, that we didn't get it done this time, but this is where we think it will fit better. It's important, especially as we're looking at the city CIP, to have the committee help us to frame a more realistic timeline, because it will lead into the city's timeline. So I don't know that, again, that's not a question they're going to ask as well. If you can't get it done, maybe it doesn't deserve to be on a 5-year plan, but I don't want to miss the chance to remember the project. These are all projects that need attention, and the exact timing of when they're completed, though it may not fit in that 5 years, it should be planned for within that 5 years.
So likely, as you said, it's like a living, breathing document. Should something, a pressing need come up, that we remain flexible and nimble enough to put it into the plan and begin to reprioritize based on something that pops up.
An example is Huron Street was underway with the DDA a few years ago. Because of our ability to be nimble, we set it aside to be able to focus on other projects. And so it's very much, Huron hasn't left, it's still here. But when we get to it, it will wait till the other projects need to get done. So absolutely.
I also think that citizens need to realize that a 5-year plan like this is not a policy statement by the DDA or anybody else. It's merely trying to anticipate things that might happen and might be good as we work together with our partners throughout the community. The DDA doesn't have any planning authority. It doesn't have anything that isn't essentially requiring approval from either city departments or the city council. So whatever is stated in here is us trying to anticipate as best we can what might be best for the downtown in accordance with work with other city departments, the city council, and private developers, which again is under the authority of planning departments and all of those kind of things. So sometimes I think that we come up with documents and people read it as policy, and indeed it's just us trying to do the best we can to figure out what the citizens, what the city administration and city council might want us to, or might want to be accomplished in the downtown for the benefit of the city at large.
And you very well stated, and priorities have to be flexible. Things happen that you can't anticipate. Partnerships happen that you can't anticipate. So you're absolutely right. This is not meant to be a policy document, but rather a planning document. It's helpful to us to know where all the moving pieces are so that we don't lose them. And they will get attention, but it just may not happen immediately, depending on others, and priorities, budgets. You know, there are all sorts of realities that play a role in this.
Realities, they always screw our plan.
Actually, I think a great example of it is 618 South Main Street. You know, that project popped up, but it's a great opportunity to tie that part of Main Street into downtown. You know, it's an exciting new piece of town, and it's a good example of what both of you are saying. You know, stay flexible, but also, you know, look for those opportunities for partnerships and turn it into a project quickly. You know, that's what we do.
So this would be an ongoing, did you have something else?
Well, I just want to point out, you know, on the other hand, you know, the bad side is if we want to stay flexible and we are hogtied in some way. So that a good example of that are the street lights on Main Street, which we were planning to replace, but then the city council decided to screw around with our budget so that we couldn't spend our money on replacing those. And now these street lights, for people who may be wondering what's happening, you know, these street lights are tied up in the bureaucracy of the city because it's now partly a city project, and city funds from the general fund have to be expended on this, and so we don't have any street lights.
So this will be an ongoing piece of the operations committee as we go forward. Next meeting, Wednesday, September 25th, 11 a.m. Is there other DDA business?
I just wanted to remark on a couple things and invite the members of the DDA to attend the Downtown Marketing Task Force, because we had some good discussions there, and share some information. Some of the information shared yesterday. Susan shared some information that we have a waiting list at Library Lighting. And many of these are the tech workers who are moving into the tech companies that are hiring in the downtown area. Please.
Yeah, this was one of those that actually was kind of fun because I know there were some that were concerned that we had too much parking. And our garages, including 4th and Washington and Forest, that have been completely replaced, had at least 2-year periods before we saw any real use. And in the case of 4th and Washington, we put the juror parking in there to try to see, try to get some use going. So we did not anticipate Library Lane having much initial use. And I shared, wow, a year later, I think, as I understood, I think we had something close to at least 50 people on the wait list, which seems pretty remarkable. Part of that is also due to our commitment to keeping spaces open for the library, because when this was first conceived, the concern was there were 150 to 200 spaces next to the library, that there always be a large quantity for guests of the library. So we're maintaining our commitment to the library by keeping a number of the spaces open at the garage. So the permit list has started already, a year in, which is
And I know that normal, if you read the literature, it takes maybe 3 years for people to catch on to a new parking structure.
Because people have their flight path, they know where they're going. So this just shows, I think the Center City area, for lack of a better description, is growing. The tech community in the State Street area, one of the impacts is the demand for parking in this garage. I think the number of residences is really pushing on a lot of those garages. So I think it was fortuitous that this was built. It shows the demand.
And thanks for the electric vehicle spaces, and my electric vehicle brothers and sisters are filling up those spaces. I think I got the last one today.
Another comment we heard was from the library director, who really appreciates the structure and talked about how people are constantly coming up to the front desk to commend the structure, how convenient they find it, how much they like it. Said it's a good-looking structure. Mary Kerr was there, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, to report that we remain the #1 destination in the state of Michigan, judging from hotel occupancy rates, and we are second only to Chicago in the entire Midwest, which I thought was a very interesting number to know. And as we know, downtown is a major attraction for people to come in, obviously for business and for visits. And we heard from the director of the South U Association, who said that although art fair numbers were down, her artists did pretty well. So they had a fair year. I know it was the weather was. I know it's difficult with art fair when the Detroit radio and television stations are broadcasting heat warnings to get people to come down. But she said that the artists in her area did fairly well.
If City Council could pass a resolution about the weather for next year, that could help.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, I would just urge you that there's good conversations at the Downtown Marketing Task Force. It meets at 10:15 on the second Tuesday, right here.
Very good. Any other DDA business? Other audience participation? You'll have 4 minutes each. Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Less than low. We'll have to talk.